In 1889, Adolf Hitler was born in Braunau am Inn, a small Austrian town bordering Germany. His father worked as a customs official for the Austrian government, while his mother, a close relative of his father, became a quiet, supportive presence in his life. This union between relatives wasn't uncommon in that era, but it would contribute to the challenges and tensions that shaped Hitler's early life. 86. Hitler began attending school. While he showed a clear talent for art, his academic record was less than stellar, often struggling with other subjects. His father, who envisioned him as a public servant, grew frustrated with Hitler's ambitions of becoming an artist, often responding with harsh discipline. As a result, young Hitler endured frequent physical and emotional abuse, which created lasting feelings of anger and resentment. As the years passed, both of Hitler's parents passed away. By then, his dream of pursuing art had only intensified. In search of a future in art, he moved to Vienna, hoping the city's vibrant art scene would help him achieve his goals. But Hitler's dreams were quickly shattered. He applied twice to the Academy of Fine Arts Vienna, only to be rejected both times. The Academy found his work uninspired and lacking in the color, rhythm, and imagination necessary for a career in art. Instead, they remarked that his work looked more like architectural sketches than fine art. For many, Vienna was a place of culture and opportunity. For Hitler, however, it became a painful reminder of his failures. To survive, he took on menial jobs and sold small paintings. But money was scarce, and he struggled to make ends meet, spending 5 years in poverty, isolated and frustrated by his perceived lack of talent and recognition. In 1913, at the age of 24, Hitler left Austria for Germany. Rumor had it he did so to avoid conscription into the Austro-Hungarian military. Ironically, just a year later, World War I broke out, and while Hitler had successfully dodged Austrian service, he volunteered to join the German army. One common explanation for this choice is that Hitler despised the idea of serving alongside the diverse nationalities in the Austro-Hungarian forces, such as Hungarians, Slavs, and Czechs. During World War I, Hitler suffered a severe leg injury in the Battle of the Somme in 1916 and returned to the front lines in early 1917. Later, in 1918, he was temporarily blinded in a British gas attack and spent time recovering in a German military hospital. It was here, while still healing, that he received news of Germany's defeat. He was devastated. For him, the loss was not only a national humiliation, but also a personal betrayal, with the lives of more than 2 million German soldiers sacrificed for what he saw as a disgraceful failure. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in the aftermath of World War I, only deepened Hitler's sense of resentment. Germany's overseas territories and spheres of influence were stripped away, and the harsh conditions of the treaty led to widespread economic and political unrest across the country. For Hitler, this was the turning point. He resolved to abandon his artistic dreams and plunge headfirst into the world of politics. After the war, he joined a small nationalist group in Munich called the German Workers' Party. The group had fewer than 100 members, and Hitler quickly rose to become the 7th committee member. His talent for delivering impassioned speeches helped him gain popularity. Later German General Heinz Guderian described Hitler's oratorical skills, noting his uncanny ability to communicate his ideas in relatable terms, using repetition as if driving a nail into the hearts of his listeners. Hitler knew how to adjust his tone and approach to match the mindset of his audience, adapting to the backgrounds of those before him. With his fervor for politics and natural gift for public speaking, Hitler became the leader of the German Workers' Party in 1921. He rebranded it as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, known as the Nazi Party, a name that would soon resonate across Germany. To complete this transformation, Hitler designed the party's iconic flag, satisfying his long-standing desire to create a visual symbol of his movement. The red of the flag represented the social aspect of the movement, the white symbolized nationalism, and the black swastika embodied the mission of achieving victory for the Aryan race. Beyond the flag, Hitler personally designed arm patches and banners featuring an eagle symbol and the slogan, "Awaken Germany." The Nazi Party's new identity quickly attracted a significant following, especially among Germany's lower middle class, which had struggled to recover after World War I. By 1923, party membership swelled to over 30,000, and Hitler, now firmly in control, organized a paramilitary group known as the SA or Brown Shirts. Inspired by Mussolini's fascist takeover in Italy, Hitler believed that an armed uprising could lead to power. Thus, in November 1923, he orchestrated the failed beer hall putsch. During the clash, 4 policemen and 16 Nazi supporters were killed, and Hitler was arrested, sentenced to 5 years in prison for treason. However, he served only 9 months. During his incarceration, Hitler authored Mein Kampf, My Struggle, a book in which he outlined his vision for Germany's future. He spoke of reclaiming Germany's lost territories, restoring its military, and achieving respect on the world stage. He envisioned a greater Germany with enough living space for the Aryan race, ultimately aiming for global dominance. The book also detailed his supposed leadership qualities and his foresight about world affairs and Germany's future. However, in 1928, the public was far from captivated. The Nazi Party received only 2.6% of the national vote in that year's elections. But a turning point came with the global economic downturn. Following the 1929 Wall Street crash, Germany's economy collapsed under the weight of reparations from the Treaty of Versailles, bank failures, and skyrocketing unemployment. The crisis was fertile ground for Hitler's rhetoric. In 1930, Nazi support surged, gaining 18.5% of the vote. By the 1932 presidential election, Nazi support had risen to 36.8%, making it Germany's largest political party. In January 1933, at age 44, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. The following year, he merged the roles of President and Chancellor, declaring himself Führer, or Supreme Leader of Germany. This marked the beginning of the Third Reich, a regime built on authoritarian rule, militarization, and strict control over the economy. Hitler promised that every German family would have bread and milk on the table, and within a few years, his policies garnered widespread public support, particularly among those who had suffered during the Great Depression. In late 1934, Hitler issued a secret order to rebuild Germany's military, circumventing the Treaty of Versailles. By 1935, he publicly announced the expansion of the German army from 100,000 to 300,000 troops, blatantly violating the treaty's terms. This move drew international condemnation from Britain and France, who issued a collective protest but took no concrete action. Hitler felt emboldened, believing that as long as he acted with sudden resolve, other nations would hesitate to interfere. On March 7, 1936, Hitler openly defied both the Treaty of Versailles and the Locarno treaties by sending 30,000 troops into the demilitarized Rhineland, establishing defensive fortifications along Germany's western border. Once again, Britain and France issued only verbal protests, leaving Hitler free to pursue his expansionist ambitions without opposition. Later that year, Germany entered into the Anti-Comintern Pact with Japan, which Italy joined in 1937, officially forming the Axis powers. With his position secure and newfound allies, Hitler now set his sights on an even larger target, his homeland Austria. In February 1938, Hitler pressured Austria to allow its Nazi party to operate legally and to join with Germany. Austrian Chancellor Kurt Schuschnigg quickly announced a national referendum to let the people decide if they wanted independence. On March 12, the night before the vote, Hitler, fearing an unfavorable result, ordered German troops to invade Austria. To his surprise, they were welcomed by Austrian Nazis, and the invasion unfolded without a single shot fired. Within hours, Austria became the first sovereign nation absorbed into the expanding German Reich. Despite this bold move, Britain and France remained passive, emboldening Hitler further. By the summer of 1938, he focused on his next goal, Czechoslovakia. In the Sudetenland, a region bordering Germany, millions of ethnic Germans resided, and Hitler incited them to demand autonomy, even threatening military action against Czechoslovakia. The Czechoslovak government, determined to resist, initiated full-scale mobilization in preparation for war. With tensions rising, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain stepped in to mediate. He flew to Germany twice to meet with Hitler, who assured him that annexing the Sudetenland would be his final territorial demand in Europe. On September 29, 1938, the Munich Agreement was signed by Germany, Britain, France and Italy, ceding the Sudetenland to Germany. Chamberlain returned to Britain, famously declaring that the agreement had secured peace for our time. However, this act of appeasement would prove to be futile. By March 1939, Hitler had set his sights on further conquest. Ethnic Germans in eastern Czechoslovakia sought more autonomy and appealed to Hitler for assistance. He summoned Czechoslovak President Emil Hácha to Berlin and pressured him to accept a German protectorate over his country. German troops entered Czechoslovakia without resistance, marking the first time Hitler seized a non-German-speaking territory. The Western powers, once again, issued only weak protests, further emboldening Hitler. Later that month, Hitler began planning his next target, Poland. Following World War I, the Free City of Danzig had been placed under the League of Nations administration, but was economically aligned with Poland. Hitler demanded that Poland relinquish control over Danzig to facilitate a link between Germany and East Prussia. This time, however, Britain and France made it clear they would respond with force if Hitler attacked Poland. Yet, Hitler remained undeterred, viewing the Western nations as indecisive and weak. Meanwhile, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, alarmed by Hitler's aggression, proposed an alliance with Britain and France, but negotiations dragged on. Frustrated by the lack of progress, Stalin chose a different approach to counter Germany's threat. On August 23, 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union shocked the world by signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression treaty. With the Soviet threat temporarily neutralized, Hitler ordered the German military to prepare for an invasion. On the night of August 31, 1939, the German military finalized their plans for the Polish invasion. Under Hitler's orders, members of the SS disguised themselves as Polish soldiers and staged an attack on the German radio station at Gliwice, broadcasting anti-German propaganda. They left behind several bodies dressed in Polish uniforms, all of whom were actually German prisoners. German media quickly broadcast the Polish assault, creating a pretext for war. At dawn on September 1, 1939, Germany launched a full-scale invasion of Poland, marking the beginning of World War II. Under the command of General Fedor von Bock, German forces attacked from the north, while General Gerd von Rundstedt's troops advanced from the south. The two armies aimed to converge at Warsaw and Brest. Utilizing the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war tactic, the German military overwhelmed Polish defenses, wiping out the Polish Air Force within 2 days and advancing deep into enemy territory. Poland's defenses crumbled, and within weeks, the nation fell. In early 1940, British naval forces seized a German supply ship off the coast of Norway, an event known as the Altmark Incident. This incident brought the neutral countries of Norway and Denmark into the war's orbit. In response, Hitler ordered an invasion of both nations to secure a foothold in the North Sea. On April 9, 1940, German forces landed in Denmark, clashing briefly with the Danish Royal Guard. Denmark surrendered within hours. Meanwhile, German troops advanced into Norway, capturing key coastal towns with support from the Luftwaffe, Germany's powerful air force. Allied forces attempted to defend Norway, but were forced to retreat as German reinforcements poured in. Norway soon fell entirely under German occupation. On May 10, 1940, Hitler launched his long-planned invasion of France. Instead of directly attacking the heavily fortified Maginot Line, the German army took a different route, moving through the dense forests of the Ardennes in Belgium. This allowed General Heinz Guderian's armored units to bypass French defenses, driving deep into French territory. Within days, the German forces had outmaneuvered the Allies, trapping British and French troops at Dunkirk. While it seemed likely that the trapped forces would be annihilated, Hitler inexplicably ordered a halt to the German advance, intending to let infantry units finish the job. This decision, often regarded by historians as one of Hitler's major blunders, allowed over 300,000 Allied troops to be evacuated in what became known as the Miracle of Dunkirk. By June 1940, France had surrendered, and Britain stood alone against Germany. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill vowed to continue the fight, rallying his nation to resist. Britain was not entirely isolated. Countries within the British Empire, including Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and India, declared war on Germany in solidarity. Nevertheless, Britain faced severe threats, with German forces dominating mainland Europe. Confident in his position, Hitler offered peace terms to Britain, which would allow it to keep its empire in exchange for Germany's control over Europe. Churchill, however, flatly refused, preparing Britain for what would become the Battle of Britain. Determined to subdue Britain, Hitler devised Operation Sea Lion, a plan to invade the British Isles. However, the British Navy remained a formidable force, vastly superior in numbers and experience compared to the German Kriegsmarine. Hitler turned to the Luftwaffe, ordering a campaign to gain air superiority over the English Channel. The resulting air conflict, known as the Battle of Britain, began on July 16, 1940, and intensified in August, as the Luftwaffe launched relentless bombings over British cities, dropping over 60,000 tons of bombs. Despite heavy casualties and destruction, British resilience forced Hitler to abandon his invasion plans, shifting his focus instead to the Soviet Union. Before invading the Soviet Union, Hitler sought to secure Germany's southern flank by forming alliances and occupying additional territories. Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary pledged support to Germany, aligning with Hitler's vision of a new order in Europe. However, political instability in the Balkans soon disrupted his plans. In March 1941, a pro-German government in Yugoslavia was overthrown in a coup, and neighboring Greece also resisted German influence with British support. On April 6, 1941, German forces invaded the Balkans, swiftly overwhelming Yugoslavia and Greece. Despite British reinforcements, the Greek capital, Athens, fell within 3 weeks, clearing the way for Hitler's long-anticipated invasion of the Soviet Union. On June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, sending millions of soldiers across the Soviet border in a three-pronged assault. Hitler confidently predicted a swift, 3-month victory over the Soviet Union. Initially, German forces made significant gains, encircling and annihilating Soviet troops in several major battles, including a massive engagement that destroyed 300,000 Soviet soldiers. In late September, over 1 million German soldiers, backed by 1,700 tanks and 11,000 artillery pieces, began the drive toward Moscow in the Battle of Moscow. However, severe winter weather and fierce Soviet resistance brought the German advance to a halt, and the battle ended in a devastating German defeat, with over 500,000 casualties and a massive loss of equipment. This marked the first significant setback for the Nazis in World War II. Despite the Moscow defeat, Hitler remained determined to conquer the Soviet Union. In 1942, German forces regained momentum with early victories in Crimea, pushing into the oil-rich Caucasus region. However, the Battle of Stalingrad in late 1942 became a critical turning point. The brutal urban combat drained German resources, and morale as Soviet troops mounted a relentless defense. By November, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive, encircling 330,000 German troops. After months of brutal fighting, the German Sixth Army was forced to surrender on February 2, 1943. Stalingrad was a crushing defeat, signaling the beginning of the Nazi regime's decline. In the same year, the Allies intensified their campaign, winning victories in North Africa and bombarding German cities. In July 1943, Allied forces invaded Sicily, leading to Italy's eventual surrender. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces launched the D-Day invasion of Normandy, establishing a Western Front and pushing German forces back into occupied France. As Allied forces advanced from the west and Soviet forces pushed in from the east, Hitler's situation became increasingly desperate. By April 1945, Soviet troops had reached the outskirts of Berlin, encircling the city. Refusing to surrender, Hitler retreated to an underground bunker beneath the Reich chancellery, where he continued to issue commands to a crumbling military. On April 30, 1945, Hitler married his longtime companion, Eva Braun, in a brief ceremony. Hours later, they both took their own lives. Hitler with a gunshot and Braun with poison. Their bodies were carried outside, doused in gasoline, and burned in the garden of the chancellery to prevent their remains from being captured. Hitler's rule left a dark and lasting impact on the world. World War II resulted in an estimated 50 to 80 million deaths, with his policies directly causing the Holocaust, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of others, including Slavs, disabled individuals, and political dissidents. Hitler's life, marked by extreme ambition, prejudice, and brutality, transformed him from an unsuccessful artist into one of history's most infamous dictators. His story serves as a somber reminder of the destructive power of authoritarianism and the horrors that can unfold when hatred and intolerance are allowed to thrive.